Have you ever heard of soul contracts? Well, tonight, the ladies and I will be sharing with you what we've experienced learning about soul contracts when it comes to you and the people in your life. So tonight, I am your host, Yaila Weddle, joined with Corey Davidson and Peyton Craning. We are all intuitive teachers and healers, and this is our video series that we brought together to talk about different things connected with energy. So metaphysics, psychic tools, and all different topics that you are possibly experiencing yourself or wanting to learn about. So thanks for joining us. Before I forget, please like and share, and we love your comments. You can always subscribe to our individual YouTube channels that are listed below. So kicking off tonight, let's talk about soul contracts. So how about you, Peyton? What would you like to kick us off talking about soul contracts with?
Thanks, Yaila. This is such a fascinating topic. When I first started my intuitive development and I heard about soul contracts, it was one of the first things I wanted to know more about. I wanted to read all of mine because I'm such a left brain thinker. And so understanding what soul contracts are, they sound a little different from the way the guides will explain to us in terms of what a soul contract is. And the way my guides have taught me to look at soul contracts is as an intention that we set for ourselves before we incarnate on Earth. So we set these intentions for experiences we want to have or people that we want to interact with and connect with during this lifetime. And that's what our soul contracts are. They're informal agreements or intentions. Because as humans, it's easy to hear the word soul contract and think of it like a human contract, like something that's written in stone that you can't change, that binds you forever. And that's not what a soul contract is. Soul contracts are actually very easy to change for the most part. And they're just intentions to guide us in this lifetime toward particular experiences, experiences that our soul wants to have. So understanding kind of what one is, I think, is always the first step because it's really easy to put that human lens on it. So one thing to understand about soul contracts that my guides have shared with me is that we have so many different soul agreements because as humans, we have infinite timelines. So throughout our life, we can go in so many different ways based on every choice we make, and each one will activate different soul contracts depending on the frequency that we're on. So as we do our spiritual work and we move to higher vibrations, we start to activate different soul contracts, higher vibrational ones. But we can make other choices in life that might make us intersect with soul contracts that aren't so much fun. Those people that are just really aggravating in our life, or those relationships that break our heart. Those can also be soul contracts, just of a different vibration. So your vibration will influence what soul contracts become activated. So one thing that's important, I think, in looking at a soul contract is understanding if it's in your best and highest good. Because some soul contracts are going to be beneficial to us. They could be a contract for the love of our life or the child that we agree to bring into the world, or even our animals, the pets that we end up living with can be soul contracts. But those are ones that may be for our best and highest good. But we may also have soul contracts that are not for our best and highest good. That we put them in place in case we wanted to experience, getting our heart broken or that nasty divorce. It can also be soul contracts that are just not ones that we really want to continue if we don't have to. So the way my guides have kind of taught me to look at soul contracts is you can always cancel the ones that aren't for your best and highest good. So the question is this for my best and highest good? Is this what I want to experience in life? So I think the most important thing with soul contracts is they can be changed for the most part. They're flexible. They are not engraved in stone, signed in blood like we might think. So one great approach to it that my guides have taught me is to just set the intention to cancel or void any soul contracts that aren't based in love. And so they've given me a process to just start to cancel some of those intentions that we set for ourselves in this lifetime that aren't things that we necessarily want to rendezvous with now. So just remember your contracts they're intentions, they're changeable for the most part. And you can always disentangle yourself from those ones that aren't so much fun when you run into them right now. So they're interesting to understand and always changeable. So as always, set your intentions in life and you'll rendezvous with more exciting and fun soul contracts. So that's how I look at them. How about you, Corey?
Well, I just love that. Ooh, only keep the contracts that are in the vibration of love. Like, that's wonderful. I've never heard that before, but that's what I love about getting together with you ladies, because not only are we sharing our knowledge with everyone else, but we learn from each other, and that's the wonderful gift of energy work. Soul contracts. You know, the, when we talked about doing soul contracts, and I started, just reviewing, soul contracts. The first word that came to my mind was karma, and you know, for me, and one of the things that I work with my clients about is because it's been my experience, and a lot of my clients is a lot of people don't understand, don't even really know too much about soul contracts, but more people know about karma, and but karma and soul contracts really go hand in hand, because I mean, you can look at soul contracts as karma, but karma's always looked at as well as being something bad, or that you did something, you're paying the price for something. And that's not what that is. However, the karma with your soul contracts is things that um, we're on this earth plane, the big school of earth. And soul contracts is how you get to learn the things that you signed up for. When I first started doing this work and being aware of soul contracts, it really helped me to not beat myself up, but in the sense of understanding that soul contracts are something that we plan before we come down here to the earth plane. What do we want to learn? What do we want to do? Who do we want to do it with? And um, and there are times where it's like, wow, this is my soul contract, or I with my clients and students, they're like, oh my God. And I said, well, you signed up for it. And there was a time where I was like, really? I signed up for this? Like, what was I thinking? But in the other realms, it really does look so good. And when we get down here to earth, um, soul contracts is how we start to learn the lessons that we signed up for. Because if we don't have those soul contracts, then there's no one to learn from, or no interaction to have with somebody when it comes to soul contracts. And I loved how you said, Peyton, about they can be changed. I had a list of them that I wanted to change. As a Capricorn, because Capricorns sign up to clear a lot of karma, soul contracts. And by the time I got to training in this work, I had already cleared a lot of karma. So I was familiar with karma. But when it came to the karma and soul contracts, that they could change, that was fascinating. So it made me feel like I had more control of my own life, my own soul, with the soul contracts. And that it wasn't some random thing or something horrible that I had done, or, an intention that went wrong. When I came to understand, and that's what I teach my clients and my students, is that soul contracts is something we signed up for on the other side, but that they can be changed. And and that's what and again, because I'm a Capricorn, so karma is always that thing, clear that karma. Soul contract for me they kind of go hand in hand. And not necessarily a bad thing, but so had a lot of that in my life. What about you, Yaila?
I love how you both kind of described the soul contracts and how you broke it down for us, Peyton. And I agree. To me, it goes hand in hand with karma. When I think of soul contracts and how I like to teach it, because a lot of my students and clients, they have questions when they've had some really hard stuff happen in their life, right? They have rough upbringing with their family, our families, especially our immediate family. Those are really big soul contracts that we agree with. There's, on the other side, before we come into this lifetime, like Peyton was saying, there's experiences, there's things that we are wanting to learn as a soul to understand different levels. To me, I interpret as different levels of, or different ways to experience love and understand love. And here on planet Earth we live in a world dichotomy, right? Light and dark, up and down, tight, open. Like there's all these different parallels, dichotomies. And for me, when I've started understanding soul contracts, sometimes one of my favorite quotes from the movie Vanilla Sky, it's like, you can't know the sweet without the sour. I think of soul contracts kind of like that, where there's different ways to understand love through these different life experiences. And we live in an infinite universe, meaning it's expanding as we are speaking right now. There's decisions and choices and things that are expanding. And every moment in our life, all the different decisions that we make are propelling us into different, like Peyton was saying, timelines, or, different ways that we can open up and experience different levels of our life and our love and just keep expanding that. And so when I think of soul contracts, I think of it as a way to keep expanding the universe and keep expanding us as a soul to understand all the levels and all the facets of love. So going back to when my students ask me questions about, well, what about, is it part of my soul contract that I lost my baby, at birth? Like, who would want that? I would never wish on anybody, but when I've asked this question, to my guides and who I work with, the answer I got back was the contract between those two souls was so the mother would know and really understand unconditional love. Because what happens as we grow up, life happens, and there's sometimes you don't always truly love the people. I mean, you love them, but there's experiences that happen as, we're different ages where, there is frustration, there's anger, there's contempt, there is conditional love. And so imagine being a mother who only knows love with this soul that was on the earth. So for whatever amount of time, it was 100% unconditional. And so sometimes we don't always understand why the soul contract was made, especially when there is those really deep traumas that happen. Some of them, I've noticed some souls like to experience really extreme energy, meaning they really like to know the depths of the dark, 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 dark to understand the brightest of the light. And their soul kind of oscillates between those really extreme experiences. I found for my soul, in at least this lifetime, I don't want to play with such extreme energies, but there's some people who really want to experience the most extreme possible. And that's just part of their soul's journey. So we're all here for different experiences and different soul contracts. And when you think of the souls on the other side, there's just so much love for each other and saying, okay, you want to understand what it's like to really appreciate life. If you think back in war times, it's like there were warriors and there were people who took each other's life and learned the value of life and learned the impact of that soul no longer being in this plane from being killed on the battlefield and killing on the battlefield. They understood the preciousness of life, and that was part of their soul contract. So I think of soul contracts with dichotomy in mind, knowing, sometimes you don't know the sweet without the sour. And it's also a way for us to keep expanding the universe. We want new things, we want new experiences from what we've learned in every single lifetime and every single experience. And think about your life right now. There's things that you've experienced that at the time were probably really challenging and frustrating. I'll think of when I trained for a marathon and I messed up my knee and I couldn't walk for a week. But where I went from that point to like learning a new way to train and understanding how my body could be stronger from that, even though in the moment not walking for 3 weeks was horrible. And like, why would anybody do this? To like moving through the other side and understanding what it's like to like really get the right mindset and training. Then I loved that experience because it taught me so much about, again, like Corey was saying, you know, you do have a say, you do have control, and you can change. Like Peyton was saying, even though you come into this lifetime with a certain type of contract to learn a certain level of energy or dichotomy with someone, you don't have to stay in that. Once you have that awareness, you have that awareness and you get to choose if you want to keep going down that path, or you can adjust it. You can recreate the contract, or you can void it completely. So soul contracts are a really big concept, but I love, you know, learning about them and like learning each person's different experiences as far as the different contracts they have with the people in their life, because there's so many different levels that we experience with the people who really impact us and we impact in return. So it's pretty deep, but it's pretty cool at the same time.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Yaila, because it reminded me of something when I've looked at these for some of my clients and even some of my own soul contracts. Some of the biggest traumas and the things that we look at as being the most negative and challenging experiences, and we can hold a lot of resentment, like you mentioned, to the people that we go through these experiences with. They are often our absolute best friends on the other side, because they are the only ones who would agree to play out an experience with us. They had so much love for us that they agreed in this lifetime to be the ones to be, you know, maybe the one who causes the trauma or the pain, or because they love us so much on the other side. And so I always find that that helps me, especially with those challenging family relationships that so many people struggle with, that are often some of our deeper soul contracts, are often our absolute most beloved soul family members on the other side. And so it can help us step back and be like, put us back in love for those experiences that can be really hard to love when you're going through them, even for some time afterwards, can be powerful soul contracts that only someone who loved us that much would agree to be that aggravating or that, you know, traumatizing in this lifetime. So soul contracts are funny things. It's to propel growth is how I look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, you know, to propel growth. And how I help, right? How I help my clients and students. And when I came to understand about soul contracts, it gave me a new level of compassion, not just for myself, but like you were saying, Peyton, you know, that those souls loved us so much on the other side, you know, that they agreed to do that. And I loved what you shared, you know, Yaila, as well, you know, and I've had that experience of, you know, losing a child, you know, just before 5 months pregnant. And it was the most unbelievable experience I had ever had, experiencing life and death at the same time. And, but through learning about soul contracts, just knowing what soul contracts were, you know, the souls that we signed up to come and help us in this lifetime, as we have signed up to help them, completely changed, you know, the healing process for me, and was able to get in contact with my daughter who I had lost, and to find out that, you know, she just needed a body to complete a cycle that she needed. And we agreed on the other side that I would be her mama, and to give her that body. And that was, I mean, the healing that happened. And it gave me a whole new meaning of soul contracts. a whole new meaning, and to look that, not just the soul contracts that we have with other people, but, then there was, her father that was involved. So soul contracts don't just involve one, it's one person to one person, like you were talking about, Yaila, that family unit, everybody has their single soul contracts, but it encompasses a lot of souls, the souls that come throughout your whole lifetime. And it wasn't until I did understand soul contracts that I knew that, like, for example, with my daughter, or relationships that I've had, that I was able to, go and complete those, and file them away in the Akashic records, and just say, okay, those are complete. And to be able to actually look at the lessons that I was to learn from that soul contract. That was the big deal. And so that's what I pass on to my clients and students, that yes, we have the soul contracts. The important thing is what did you, before I'll even complete or um, file the soul contract for my clients, is I always want to know, what was it that you learned? What do you think this soul contract was about? Not just that it was so miserable, I hate that person, I don't want anything to do with it, I just want to, I want out of my life. For me and my clients, it's not a good enough answer. It's not a good enough answer. It's important to know, maybe not exactly what, but did you learn, what was the lesson that you learned? What was the lesson to be learned in that soul contract? And sometimes, at least it's been my experience, sometimes, well, now actually, I've worked a lot with soul contracts, able to get the lesson so that I don't have to keep repeating it over and over and over and over and over again. But that it took repeating them over and over and over again before I was like, okay, I'm done. To actually know what the soul contract was and to be able to look at it. I think it's a big key in moving on, but really acknowledging and knowing what were the lessons that I signed up for with that soul contract. So that's, for me, that's when I work with people, and for myself, that's a really important part that I have found.
I've noticed too, there's a lot of people on this planet that are here to kind of stop cycles that have been going on generation after generation after generation. And they have contracts to come into these families of, I hate to use the word toxic, but it's just kind of that term that floats out there. It's like kind of these toxic cycles that keep repeating generation after generation. And their souls that are coming in now to keep that higher consciousness of the impact of what these cycles actually do and how it perpetuates. And there's a lot more souls I'm noticing here on the planet that are here to end those cycles. So it's pretty amazing. And Corey, like you were saying, and you, Peyton, kind of looking at, well, what are some of my contracts, and looking at, my biological father wasn't really part of my life. He was non-existent. I didn't have really a relationship with him. And just trying to understand that contract, with him. I'm like, well, what was the point of him being my dad if he wasn't going to be my dad? There's all these different abandonment things that I've looked at, and, other relationships where you're looking at the unavailableness, and it's like, oh, they were here to teach me how to love and trust myself. Like, it was about me learning to go within. Like, it set me on this journey to really connect within and find my own connection to universe, source, the spiritual work. Because up until that, I had that awareness. I wouldn't say that I was actually on a more conscious path, so those soul contracts that I had really helped me understand self-love. They still teach me about self-love and trusting myself and trusting the universe and trusting, learning how to be vulnerable, which wasn't always easy. Or I think about other family members where I just kind of felt like I always had to figure things out on my own. I'm like, oh, they taught me how to be independent. They taught me freedom. Like, I have this mission in this lifetime for freedom. I'm an Aquarius, like I want freedom and like different levels of that. And sometimes you kind of have to understand the rougher side of it, and you pull yourself through, or you find those other people to support you on the way through. And then once you start to understand it and look through the lens of love, you're like, oh, got it. I wouldn't be where I'm at unless I had these types of experiences. So anything else you ladies would like to add as far as soul contracts? It's a big topic.
It's a huge one. I think they are. I think I want to mirror one thing you said, Yaila, just now, is that they're really important, I think, in helping us change our perspective on the challenging situations in our life. Because like you said, we look at it through the lens of the experience that we had, especially for those challenging ones, and we tell one story. But once you know what your soul contract is, you can look at it for what it gave you, that it puts you on a path to experience something that you couldn't have experienced any other way. And then you see the blessing in it. Like you were saying, Corey, with your trauma, the blessing that it was when you understood what that looks like from your soul's perspective. It changes your whole perspective on a situation. So I think that's where they can be really, really valuable in helping us move from trauma in that story of how bad a situation was to being like, oh, wow, this whole other path of my life wouldn't have opened up if I hadn't walked through that doorway. So I think that's one of the big parts of what our contracts help us do, is change that lens that we look through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even realizing too, the story that we were telling ourselves about the experience, sometimes it really is a story. Like, if you break it down to, I'm going to use my dad as an example. Like, I had the story that he didn't love me, he didn't want me, he abandoned me, and all these things. And he's actually, crossed over to the other side as well. And I've been able to, connect with him and just understanding like he didn't feel worthy to be in my life. Like that was his kind of, life experiences. And I was able to like look at the story I was telling myself, just because he wasn't there, but I made up all these other reasons why he wasn't there. And then once you look, you kind of look at the experience with that lens of love, like, oh, some of this is my story I made up around it. And then you get to change it and adjust it. So
you take your power back that way. I think when you can look at it from that higher soul perspective. Yeah. It's powerful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insight, ladies. I hope this has helped you watching to understand a little bit more about soul contracts, and even just look at how the different relationships in your life are helping to structure you. And we would love to hear your comments on, your thoughts about tonight's topic and any other topics you'd like to hear about. Again, we really appreciate your likes and your shares and your comments. It definitely helps us share this channel and connect with the people who would really take value in hearing it. Check out below for all of our information. We all have our own individual YouTube channels with all of these past series that we've done, so you can always connect with us there. We all have our own websites. You've seen that throughout this whole video. So feel free to reach out to any one of us if you have more questions or if you'd like to connect in. So thank you again, ladies, and we will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.